You just got your paycheck, paid all your bills, and thought, I'm doing fine. But a few weeks later, you open your banking app and see your balance is almost zero. You wonder, I work hard, so why do I still have nothing left? This story isn't rare. It happens to millions of Americans, people with stable jobs, decent incomes, yet constantly caught in the cycle of expenses, debt, and financial stress. So what's really going on? Why do so many people who earn enough still feel financially trapped? And more importantly, is there a way out of this loop without changing careers or hitting the lottery? In this video, we'll explore a new perspective on modern finances and why sometimes earning enough just isn't enough. Part 1. The modern poverty loop. There's a hard truth most of us rarely admit. Not everyone who's poor is lazy, and not everyone who's rich is lucky. Chezare and Trey Bonilla point out that modern poverty in America is no longer just about lacking money. It's a subtle loop, built from systems, habits, and misguided beliefs that keep people stuck. Imagine you're Lisa, 28 years old, working in an office in Chicago. She makes $50,000 a year, rents an apartment for $1,500 a month, and still has car payments, credit card debt, and health insurance to pay. To others, Lisa seems fine, maybe even successful. But at the end of the month, her bank balance is down to a few $100s, and somehow a new debt has quietly piled on top of the old one. Lisa is trapped in the modern poverty loop. Her income is decent, her spending seems reasonable, yet she has no emergency fund. Student loans, credit cards, and unexpected costs constantly derail her plans. And she holds a quiet belief about money. If I work hard enough, I'll be okay. But the truth is, in today's system, working hard is no longer enough. And Bonilla calls this the hidden trap of modern poverty. You don't realize you're stuck because everything you're doing, paying bills on time, budgeting carefully, making car payments, looks right. But none of it builds lasting stability. This isn't rare in America. A recent study found that over 60% of Americans don't have enough savings to cover 3 months of expenses, even though they have steady jobs and incomes. They live in what Bonilla calls a false stability. Everything seems fine until one shock, a medical bill, a car repair, or a job loss sends everything crashing down. Bonilla emphasizes that this loop isn't just about money, it's about mindset. When you believe that earning enough means you'll be fine, you stop looking for ways to optimize, to prepare, to build financial breathing room. You become like Lisa, cycling from paycheck to bills, from one debt to another, while financial freedom drifts further away. So how do you know if you're stuck in the loop? Bonilla gives a simple but powerful answer. If you open your banking app at the end of the month and your balance is close to zero, you're in the loop. If payday brings more anxiety than relief, you're in the loop. Action steps. Recognize the loop. Don't hide from your numbers, face your real financial situation. Track recurring expenses. Note every repeating cost, credit cards, debt payments, living fees. Spot destructive habits. Emotional spending, no emergency savings, avoiding planning. The modern poverty loop doesn't just take your money, it takes your freedom, your time, and your peace of mind. But once you see it, once you dare to look directly at your bank balance and your habits, that's the first step towards breaking free. Lisa may still be stuck today, but the moment she starts tracking her spending, building an emergency fund, and rethinking how she manages money, the loop begins to break. Slowly but surely, step by step, week by week, month by month.
Part 2. Living beyond means. In today's world, many Americans don't struggle because they don't earn enough, but because they spend far more than they should, in ways society and the system have quietly trained them to. Take the story of Mark, a 32-year-old engineer living in Austin. He earns $75,000 a year, a solid income, enough for a comfortable life. But Mark wants to keep up with his friends. A new car, the latest phone, daily coffee runs, weekend dinners at nice restaurants. At first, it all feels fine. But by the end of each month, his bank account is nearly empty. Soon, he starts using credit cards to fill small gaps, and that small gap slowly turns into a growing hole. Chezare and Trey Bonilla call this the style before budget syndrome. People spend based on emotion, trying to project success instead of living within their real means. The result? Modern poverty isn't just about low income anymore. It's about a lack of discipline in planning, even among high earners. Bonilla points out that this problem becomes even more dangerous because it's socially approved, even encouraged by technology and culture. Advertising tells you deserve this. Credit cards and buy now, pay later apps make overspending effortless and almost invisible. Social media adds pressure to look richer, trendier, more put together than you really are. A Federal Reserve study found that over 50% of middle-class Americans can't cover a $400 emergency expense, despite steady jobs and decent incomes. That shows the issue isn't personal failure. It's a systemic phenomenon where people chase lifestyle instead of security, and style replaces substance. Bonilla poses a haunting question. Do you truly own your money, or has it trained you to live by the rhythm of ads and social pressure? Action steps. Create a realistic budget. Identify essential expenses before spending on wants. Prioritize an emergency fund, so overspending doesn't push you into debt. Spot emotional spending. Learn to separate wants from needs. Set smart limits on credit cards and buy now, pay later services. Living beyond your means is an invisible trap. You don't feel the pain right away, but over time, it quietly pulls you deeper into debt and further away from financial freedom. When Mark finally realized he was stuck, he started tracking every dollar, cutting unnecessary expenses, and challenging his emotional buying habits. A few months later, he felt something he hadn't in years: control. A small step, but a powerful one, toward breaking free from the modern poverty loop.
Part 3. Debt and Credit Illusions. In the modern world, money isn't just paper or metal anymore. It's power, trust, and illusion. Chezare and Trey Bonilla describe debt as one of the most sophisticated traps of modern poverty. It doesn't strike like a sudden blow. It creeps in quietly, blending into everyday life, making you feel secure until one day you realize you're trapped in a cycle with no way out. Meet Jason, a 26-year-old marketing professional in Miami. He graduated from college with $40,000 in student loans. He started his career and began making payments. Everything seemed fine. But as his income grew, so did his lifestyle. A new car, a new phone, weekend trips. To afford it all, Jason turned to credit cards. And even though he paid on time, interest quietly built up, slowly eating away at his budget. Bonilla warns that debt isn't just money you owe. It's how the financial system turns money into a burden you barely notice. Credit cards, car loans, mortgages, personal loans, all are designed to let you spend first, pay later, and forget about the hidden cost. Here's the reality in America today. Around 45 million people hold student debt, totaling over $1.7 trillion. About 70% of U.S. households use credit cards, and many only pay the minimum balance each month. The real danger? Debt makes you feel richer than you actually are. You drive a nice car, own the newest phone, take vacations, but your financial freedom is quietly slipping away. As Bonilla writes, debt is an illusion. It makes you feel like you're living well, when in reality you've traded your freedom for the privilege of borrowing. Jason's story took a darker turn when unexpected expenses hit. A car repair, a medical bill, no emergency fund, more credit card debt.
He was still working hard, still earning steadily, but his freedom was gone. He asked himself, am I paying interest or am I paying for my freedom? That, Bonilla says, is the question that breaks the illusion. Action steps. Know your debt. Distinguish between good debt and bad debt. Student loans or mortgages can build future value. Credit cards and consumer loans are long-term traps. Pay strategically. Focus on high-interest debt first and avoid emotional spending. Build an emergency fund before borrowing, so one unexpected bill doesn't push you deeper into debt. Ask before you borrow. Do I really need this? Or am I just trying to prove something? Bonilla reminds us that debt doesn't just take your money, it takes your peace of mind and your power to choose. When Jason finally faced the truth, he listed every debt, cut unnecessary expenses, and built a clear repayment plan. A few months later, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: control. For the first time, financial freedom didn't feel like a dream, it felt possible. Debt and credit can be useful tools, but if you're not careful, they turn you into a slave to the very money you earn. The poverty loop isn't just about low income or overspending. It's about the illusion debt creates, keeping you spinning endlessly in a cycle that feels impossible to escape.
Part 4. The mindset shift. Poor versus rich thinking. Imagine Sarah, a 35-year-old healthcare worker in Denver. She has a stable income, no major debts, and manages her bills responsibly. Yet, at the end of every month, she feels like something's missing. Sarah does everything right. She pays her bills on time, saves a little, and contributes to her 401k. But financial freedom still feels out of reach. She starts asking herself, what am I doing wrong? Chezare and Trey Bonilla explain that the answer isn't in the numbers, it's in how we think about money. They call this the poor mindset, a set of quiet, limiting beliefs that hold people back financially. I have to work hard to make money. Saving a little is enough. Investing is risky, I shouldn't try. This mindset creates a cycle. Earn, spend, worry, work harder, yet never escape the feeling of scarcity. In contrast, the rich mindset isn't about having more money. It's about having space, control, and purpose in how you use it. Sarah began to shift her thinking. Instead of saving whatever's left, she set clear financial goals and divided her money into funds for emergencies, investments, and intentional spending. Instead of fearing risk, she learned about simple, long-term investments, focusing on understanding, not luck. Instead of seeing money as pressure, she started viewing it as a tool for freedom, something that allows her to work from passion, not necessity. Another example is Chris, a 29-year-old startup founder in Austin. He used to think that being rich means earning a lot, fast. But once he adopted the rich mindset, he realized that smart earning plus disciplined spending plus long-term investing was the real path to wealth. He started tracking every dollar, learned how to use financial leverage wisely, and discovered a powerful truth. Wealth isn't your bank balance today, it's the freedom to choose tomorrow. Bonilla emphasizes that a wealthy mindset can be trained. It's not about luck, inheritance, or a six-figure salary. It's about how you define, prioritize, and direct your money. He asks a question that stops you in your tracks. Are you letting your mindset control your life? Or are you training your mindset to control your money and your future? Action steps. Recognize your limiting beliefs. Write down the thoughts that restrict your financial growth. Question every decision. Ask yourself, am I doing this out of fear or purpose? Start investing even small. Long-term planning builds true freedom, not quick wins. Build a generational mindset. Teach your children, friends, and yourself to see money as a tool, not a trap. Sarah and Chris both started as people who were just getting by. But once they changed how they thought, everything else began to change too. Because as Bonilla reminds us, money isn't just a number. It's a mirror reflecting how you think.
Part 5. Actionable steps. Breaking the poverty loop. Once you've recognized the poverty loop and shifted your mindset, the next step is action, what Chezare and Trey Bonilla call the modern strategies for breaking poverty. These strategies don't promise miracles or overnight wealth, but if you apply them consistently, they can completely transform your relationship with money. Let's go back to Lisa, the character from Part 1. When she realized she was stuck in the loop, she began with small but powerful steps. Track every dollar, not just her total paycheck, but exactly where each dollar was going. For example, Lisa discovered she was spending $150 a month on coffee and lunches she could easily cut back on. Build an emergency fund, enough to cover 3 to 6 months of expenses, so one unexpected bill wouldn't send her into credit card debt. In America, most people don't have this safety net, and Lisa immediately felt the difference once she did. Pay debt strategically. She focused on high-interest debts first, while making small wins by paying off smaller balances to stay motivated. Create a purpose-based budget. She divided her money into 3 clear categories: essential costs, future investments, and quality of life spending. Invest consistently, no matter how small. She set up an automatic transfer of $50 a week into a Roth IRA retirement account. A small start, but one that built momentum and confidence. These may sound simple, but as Bonilla emphasizes, discipline, not intensity, is what creates transformation. Another example is Chris from Part 4. He applied the pay yourself first system, setting aside investment money before spending on anything else, and cut down on emotional purchases. In just 12 months, he paid off most of his credit card debt, built a $5,000 emergency fund, and experienced something new: financial control. Bonilla reminds us that escaping poverty isn't about earning more. It's about using what you already have intelligently, intentionally, and long-term. With the right strategy, even a modest income can create financial breathing room, and every spending decision becomes a step toward freedom. He leaves us with a question worth reflecting on. Are you willing to look honestly at your budget, your debt, and your habits to begin your journey out of the loop? Practical takeaways. Track and analyze your weekly spending. Build an emergency fund before investing. Pay off debt strategically. Start with high-interest balances. Create a clear budget. Spend, save, invest. Automate small, consistent investments. Every dollar counts. As Lisa and Chris practiced these steps, something powerful happened. They began building a life where money worked for them, instead of them constantly working for money.
Part 6. Financial Legacy and the Next Generation. As Lisa and Chris began taking control of their finances, they discovered something deeper. Escaping poverty isn't just a personal victory, it's a generational shift. Chezare and Trey Bonilla emphasize that the way you manage money today becomes your legacy, not just in the form of wealth, but in the mindset you pass down. Imagine Sarah from Part 4, now a mother of 2 in Denver. She and her husband have started teaching their kids simple lessons: how to save, how to tell the difference between wants and needs, and how to create a small budget. Not to turn them into financial experts overnight, but to build healthy money habits early and break the same scarcity cycle their parents once struggled through. In America, many middle-class families believe that as long as I earn enough, my kids will be fine. But Bonilla points out a hard truth. Money without mindset becomes a burden or an illusion. Some inherit wealth, yet still end up in financial distress. On the other hand, families who teach planning, management, and investing build something far more powerful, a sustainable legacy. They pass down not just bank balances, but the wisdom to use money intentionally throughout life. Take the Smith family in Texas as an example. The grandparents taught their children and grandchildren about emergency funds, smart spending, and long-term investing. As a result, the younger generation avoided credit card debt, built passive income streams, and learned to plan for the future. They didn't just inherit wealth, they inherited financial freedom and discipline. Bonilla leaves us with a question worth sitting with. What do you want to leave behind for the next generation? Money they'll struggle to manage, or the mindset that will set them free? Practical takeaways. Start teaching your kids early. Help them understand the value of money and healthy financial habits. Create a long-term family financial plan, savings, investments, and emergency funds. Pass down the right mindset. Money is a tool for freedom, not a source of stress. When Lisa, Chris, and Sarah practiced these principles, they realized something powerful. Escaping poverty didn't just transform their own lives, it created a positive cycle that empowered future generations to grow with confidence, freedom, and purpose. And that's the final message Bonilla leaves us with. Smart finance is the greatest inheritance you can ever give. Not the money itself, but the wisdom to earn it, manage it, and master it. Escaping poverty isn't about making more money. It's about understanding, controlling, and using it wisely for yourself and for the generations that follow. Every decision you make today shapes the financial freedom you'll have tomorrow. If you want to go deeper and follow a practical roadmap to break free from the modern poverty cycle, the Modern Guide to Being Poor and How to Fix It is waiting for you in the description below. Start your change today, one step at a time, because financial freedom doesn't wait for anyone.